Hi, this is Jim Gibson. Thank you for joining me today on my channel. Very much appreciate it. And today we're going to be talking about some financial things that you should be doing in your business, your startup. One thing you need to do before we go any further, if these type videos are helpful to you, then please subscribe and give me a thumbs up, because that tells me, that's a thank you to me that I've given you this information. It also encourages me to do more videos. Please subscribe, give me a thumbs up. So let's get talking. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I did it that made me successful for 30 years. And I mean, this is what I stuck to every single day that helped me to figure out where we were as a business, how to make business decisions, and how to make my business successful. And you should incorporate this idea in your business. But first of all, I want to talk to you about two other businesses. Now, my business, we were cabling. We're a cabling company. We cabled for voice and data networks. So I had a lot of dealings with business to business. Basically, I didn't do homes. I did businesses. So I cabled businesses. I dealt with business people. I dealt with a lot of them, thousands of business people. And I've learned what works and what doesn't work. And you're going to get this information. So let's talk about the first example of this first business that's doing things wrong. Probably is out of business because I basically stopped working for them as a subcontractor. But here's the situation. I did multiple jobs for this individual who was a Microsoft dealer. Now, Microsoft dealers means that they sell hardware, they sell software, and it's usually business to business also, and they support their software. Well, once in a while, he'd come across a situation where his customer would say, hey, I need my building cabled. And so he would call me, my company, and we would go out and cable that building, and I would invoice him for the cabling. Now, that was fantastic, and that's what I did most of the time. This person, however, made me change some of my habits. So what I did is I would invoice him, and then the next job, invoice, the next job, invoice. I don't know how many jobs I did in a row, but I wasn't getting paid. So after a month or two of not getting paid, I got a hold of him and I said, look, we can't continue like this. I need to get a check. You owe me X amount of dollars for so many months now. I need to pick up those dollars. And he would say, I have the money right here. He goes, I'll put the check in the mail. And I said, well, thank you, but I'd like to come up and pick up that check. Now, he was about an hour away from where my office was. But I also knew him well enough that if I don't get paid now, I may not get paid at all. So he said to me, well, listen, I am ready to step out the door here, and I'm going to be gone for the weekend, but I'll be back on Monday. And when I'm back on Monday, I'll have a check in my hand and I'll pay you Monday morning. And I said, great. I said, where can I go to pick up that check? Are you going to be at your office? He said, no, I'm going to be at my house. Can you stop by my house? I'll have a check ready for you. I said, fantastic. Let's do that. Showed up at his house on Monday morning, knocked on his door, and he came out. I mean, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Is he a business guy or what? He come out there with pajamas on, rubbing his eyes, telling me how tough life was and he had a rough weekend and everything else. And I said, I'm really sorry about that rough weekend. Could I pick up that check? And he says to me, well, here's the sad news. And I thought, oh gosh, I can't believe this nonsense. I got to deal with this guy. He says, I was in Las Vegas. Listen, anything that starts with, I was in Las Vegas is not going to end well, okay? Now, a lot of people in Southern California drive to Las Vegas for the weekend. But if you're out there gambling and everything else, you're not smart, okay? You're wasting money. That's the way I say it. Never spend a dime on gambling anything. No lotto cards or anything else, and I've been very successful financially. So I do not gamble, period. But apparently he gambles and drinks a lot, and I don't know what else was happening there. But anything that starts with, I was in Las Vegas for this weekend, is not going to end well at that point in the conversation. So I said, well, you don't have the check? And he said, no, I lost all that money. I was gambling. I shouldn't have gambled so much, and I had a pretty hectic weekend. And I said, can you give me anything? He goes, no, I only have enough to keep my business alive for now. And I said, okay, this is not acceptable. When can I get paid? And he says, well, maybe next week. Maybe next week. So I did get paid eventually. I don't remember the details, but I did get paid. I cleared out all those invoices that he owed me. He did pay me, but when he called me up for the next job, I said I would have to have a deposit, a work in progress type of deposit. And he was kind of annoyed at me. He should have been annoyed at himself for bad business practices. I don't know if I ever worked for him again, but I wasn't complaining because you need to pay on time. So that's the first thing you should know as a business owner. Pay your subcontractors, pay your bills, not on time, ahead of time, okay? We can talk on another video about floating. Floating is not good. So don't float someone else's money. Pay them on time. So the next story I'm going to tell you is an interesting story. And I know this guy. He's a great guy. And by the way, he's making tons of money, okay? And he asked me to work with him for a little bit, to give him some business advice. I worked with him for a little bit. And what I found out he was doing was he was paying everything on his private business card, and he was not incorporated. He was just running a company. So he had two things going on that was wrong. First of all, he was commingling his personal stuff along with business expenses. And that's unacceptable. You can't do that. You're going to get in trouble with the IRS if you do things like that. You got to know exactly where every penny goes from your business. And I'm going to tell you a little later, I'm going to tell you how I did it. It's very easy. And so the second point was he was not incorporated. Now, he had a great business. He had great clientele. Had a lot of friends that were really wealthy in Southern California. And whatever he told them, they would just pay him. You know, hey, this costs $5,000. He never had like, this costs $5,252.28. He never had anything like that. It was always, this will cost you $3,000. I need $5,000 from you. And they would pay him. That was amazing. He had a great business, again, but he's going to get in trouble with the IRS. And I don't think it's something he could grow because he had horrible business practices. Great guy, by the way, good friend. I like him. Horrible business practices. So I told him what he needed to do. Look, don't do this anymore this way. This is horrible. This is not how you run a business. Now, before I tell you how I did it and how I solved some of these problems, again, please, don't forget, please, I need you to subscribe, give me a thumbs up. I'm trying to build this channel. If I'm helping you, please help me build this channel. But next, let's go on. How did I do it? Well, first of all, I had some principles and standards, and I used them in policies. So I would always have a policy, and I had a bookkeeper. I ended up with a bookkeeper. At the beginning, it was just me. But the same procedures and policies I used with the bookkeeper that I used with myself. So the first thing I would do is I would design this policies and procedures manual, and we'll deal with this in another video, how to do this and why it is really important to have policies and procedures for every single position in your company. You should have policies and procedures that are read by your people. But in this case, we're going to talk about my bookkeeper. I always had a bookkeeper. And so the first thing I always did is always made sure I had a business accounting software. I use QuickBooks. Now, QuickBooks is getting crazy these days, to be honest with you, the prices and stuff like that. They're a good company. Everything's done in the cloud. I really like the cloud because my building burns down. Then if it's just locally stored, then I've lost all this history and everything else that the IRS is going to want to see if they ever audit me. So you got to have, reliable records, financial records. So I always use QuickBooks Online, but before I would back up and take the backup at home each night. And you got to do that. Take it home, protect it. That's your business, man. And you got to do proper accounting. But after all the accounting's done each day, I would have something called the daily numbers. I named them the daily numbers. And I don't know if other people did that or I got it from someone else, but it would be the daily numbers. Now, the things I would set up was an Excel spreadsheet for my accountant to keep track of each of my daily numbers. And my daily numbers started with how many invoices did I get in today and what were the total amounts of those invoices. So if I had, 5, 10 invoices, then they would total them up. What would it cost me to pay those invoices today? I needed to know that. The next thing I would do is total income that day. What was the total of all the checks I got in that day? So I had my accounts receivable and my accounts payable, should be that way. Accounts payable first, accounts receivable after that, and then I would also look at funds in the bank, money in the bank. How much money do I have in the bank? Each day I would look. So we had a couple accounts, but the main operating account, along with some other reserves and stuff like that, I would account for it. Then I would have a bottom line, and the bottom line would include accounts receivable, accounts payable, cash in bank. They were the things that were on my daily numbers. Every single day I looked at that, and I would look at the day before and see if it was going up or going down. And then I would do a weekly number of things to see how I did this week compared to last week. And I would do each of those. And that would keep me on keel. That would let me know how my business is doing. Am I running into problems? Am I spending my reserve capital? Always kept a reserve capital. I build it up to a 3-month reserve capital amount. So if I'm spending X amount of dollars each week, then I need to be able to continue to spend that X amount of dollars for 3 months, and that includes payroll also. So I could pay all my employees, I could cover all my costs for 3 months, even if I didn't get a dollar of income in the bank. So what that did for me is I spent 30 years always in the black. I never went into deficit spending, never went into deficit spending. If you study anything about Dave Ramsey, he probably likes this approach. I think he's a great guy, and I think you can learn a ton of stuff from Dave Ramsey, and you'd be crazy not to read all his books because he is fantastic. I don't know if I got it from him, probably not, because I started this before Dave became famous, but his principles are fantastic. You need to study it. So that tells me a lot of things. If I'm starting to see leaks in my system, I'm starting to wonder, why aren't we invoicing? Why aren't we doing this? My accounts receivable also, I forgot about that. You got to have accounts receivable in there also, because that's an asset. So I'd always have accounts receivable in there along with cash in the bank and other things, minus my accounts payable. So I would see all that, and I could see the ups and downs, a little bit of ups and downs, but I want to make sure I pay very close attention to the funds, where they were going, how I was handling them, before I would make any major decisions like buying a new truck. I had to have enough money in the bank that I could write a check. I don't want to borrow money. I want to write a check for that truck, and I'm going to do my due diligence to find the best price, and I always used new trucks. Or most of the times it was new trucks. Because of the maintenance issues and things like that, I found it to be more cost effective, but that's for another video. So to make a long story short, the daily numbers is what I'm trying to tell you, you gotta have if you're running a business. You got to pay attention to these things. This is important. And there's other things that we could talk about maybe on some other videos and all. This video is getting too long. The key is Excel spreadsheet, and I kept track of every single day. I saved those Excel spreadsheets. Now I would do that before I would sign my checks, paying my accounts payable. So I would pay my accounts payable after I saw the daily numbers. So I never paid more than what I had in the bank to cover those checks. And I'd made sure I don't obligate myself to have to pay more than what I have in the bank to pay people. So if I sent a subcontractor out to do work in, let's say, Cincinnati or someplace like that, Houston, I knew I had money in the bank, even if I didn't get paid for that job, that I could pay that subcontractor. Remember, those subcontractors aren't there to cover your risk. And I've had that a couple of times subcontracting for other companies where they would say, oh, well, my customer hasn't paid me yet. Well, I don't know who your customer is, and he doesn't owe me a dime. You owe me the money there because I subbed for you. And so you are the one that owes me the money. So I didn't say things like, well, they haven't paid me yet, so therefore What I did was, when I would assign a job for subcontractors to do, I had certain procedures and policies and certain forms that subcontractor had to fill out. I wanted that install the way I wanted it, not the way he wanted it. So I would be very particular about the details, about how I wanted things installed, what type of training you're going to give to my customer and things like that. But as soon as the work was done and my customer said, yes, the work is done and I've accepted it, I had a form of acceptance where they would sign at the bottom that it was totally acceptable, and they took, responsibility for the install. So once I had that, then I would pay my subcontractor immediately. Not 30 days later, immediately. As soon as I knew I had the product or I had the service that I requested, they would be paid. And the same thing with my suppliers. As soon as that supply came in the door, the next check run, which is usually daily, but sometimes longer than that, but the next check run, they would be paid. So I had absolutely no debt, and I had 3 months worth of reserve, and you need to build up that reserve. And I checked my balances each and every day. Well, this video has been going on for a while, and I'm going to deal with some of these issues more in detail in some other videos. Give me ideas. Tell me if you like my ideas. Make comments. I read the comments. I need more ideas of what you're interested in, things like that. How I became, I consider, extremely successful, still am, in doing something that's difficult, which is a service company. Service companies are, in my opinion, the hardest companies to run. And so I've learned a lot in that area. But give me some feedback on this. And again, thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for watching. I appreciate it. You have a great day.